Okay, hey, Assalamu alaikum. It's a question. How does emotional healing work? Right? And does it actually work? Okay, and again, like I look at everything from my experience as a pharmacist, and based on that experience, that is how I want to answer. So firstly, emotions, like we all know stress is everywhere, right? And we all know stress directly affects our body in the sense that when people get stressed, you get like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Some people get migraines. People get spots, right? Some people's hair fall out. And so stress is obviously a big thing, and it affects us on a physical level, like physiologically. It causes changes within the body, right? That's just one example. But what we do with stress is that we kind of just just waft it away, like as if, yeah, it's just stress, you have to get on with life, things happen, it's okay. And this is generally our approach to how we do things, in the sense that if something is bothering us, or if we're going through something, if we're feeling something, um, then we have this attitude of, let's just get over it, or, we just need to get on with it, and it'll be fine, it's okay. And and that's okay to do, right? It's obviously a very good positive mentality to have, that forward thinking of approach of, we need to push on. But at the same time, what we shouldn't be doing is suppressing that feeling or ignoring it and just pretending as if it isn't there. And so what we end up doing is, instead of actually like giving ourselves the space and the time to feel what we're feeling, to acknowledge it, to process it, and to, get over that feeling, instead of doing that, what we do is we just suppress it and clamp it down. Um, and so if we don't feel it, and if we're not expressing it, if we're not talking about it, if we're not thinking about it, then instead of coming out, it stays in, right? And so if it stays in, it affects us. Um, and over time, like you then it ends up manifesting into like pain, or being uncomfortable, or shoulder ache, back aches, leg aches, weird things are happening. Sometimes it could be inflammation. Other times it could be, I don't know, all sorts of things. And over time, obviously, as more experiences happen, as more you go through more things in life, you can get things that can get really, really, really chronic. And so this is why, like, we have to start understanding that emotions are not just something to be wafted away, but actually can be a big rooted uh, problem, can be the root issue of massive chronic conditions. Okay. And it's so important. And this is something like I never knew of. Even as a pharmacist, I never knew that emotions could play such a big part in having a very chronic medical condition, right? I always thought of stress as more of like just like an outside type of symptom or feeling. I didn't really think of it of how much it really affects us. But just how I explained, like how stress affects, it causes IBS and all sorts. We also have to start looking deeper at other examples, right? So, for example, I was trying to explain this to my dad the other day, that kidneys, the emotion fear affects the kidneys directly, right? And you just firstly hear that and you think, what are you talking about? But actually, when you start to think about scenarios, it makes sense, right? When a kid gets scared, right? When a child gets scared, when they're struck with fear, what is a lot of the times the response that happens? They end up weeing themselves, right? They end up urinating. They lose their control. And that's because fear, the emotion fear, affects the kidney directly. Right? Do you see how that makes sense? At the same time, when you're nervous, right? What happens? You get butterflies in your stomach. Right? You get like a stomach. It's something happening in your stomach. So emotions affect different areas of your body. Different emotions affect different areas of your body. So we have to start taking this really, really serious. Emotions play a massive part in affecting our physiological state. And if it can affect that, and if it can influence that, then it can influence conditions to happen. Okay? So that's what I wanted to share about emotions. So how does emotional healing actually work? So emotional healing is really trying to pinpoint those suppressed emotions, right? Bringing them back to the surface, giving that space to deal with them, to acknowledge them, to, understand what was happening, to feel them, right? And then when you're ready to kind of let it go, so that it's no longer in your body, it's now out, right? And when that happens, you're then able to regain that energy flow to that area, and it will re-begin the healing process. And you start to notice actually when you do emotional healing, especially for people that come forward with things like leg pain or shoulder pain and upper back pain or lower back pain, and they come saying, I've had it for years, and they've just accepted as something they've always had, and they've always just had it. But it's interesting that when we go through this process of emotional healing, that as soon as we actually identify what was going on and the root emotion, it doesn't actually take long for them to, we process it, we go through it, and once they're ready to let go, they let go of it. And then they instantly feel that relief. Oh, it's gone. Don't feel it anymore. I actually once had a client, she had tailbone pain. And she actually remembers it from a so-called accident that she had, right? And she said she's not had it for a long time and it's come up again, but she remembers it was from an accident. And so there's definitely physical trauma there. But we thought, let's have a look if there's any emotional root causes. So we did the exercise, we did the practices, and there was a root cause. And we processed those emotions, and that tailbone pain went away that evening, right? She told me the next day, she said, it's gone, completely gone. And so we waited as well for another 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I followed up with her, and she's not had it since. It's just completely gone. So it just shows how a lot of the times things flare up, right? We might have an issue, right? Something comes up. Maybe we have, I don't know, some kind of inflammation going on in the body, right? Maybe some pain or some, skin flare up or something. And then does it happen for years, and all of a sudden it comes up again, right? And you're thinking, why? Like, why did that happen? So I want you to really reflect on what was happening at the time. Did something else happen? Right? Was there anything else going on that you remember? And also at the same time, for those people that are constantly in pain, right? I need to try and think about the first time it started, what else was happening at the time. And what memories kind of, come back for you in terms of things that you just remember, in terms of feelings, what feelings do you remember? It's very, very interesting, some of the things that come up here. Because if, for example, imagine fear affects the kidneys, right? Like we said, fear affects the kidneys directly, so much so that a kid can wee themselves, an adult can lose control of their, wee themselves, right? So imagine if there's a sense of fear that is stuck inside of that person for so long, they've not processed it for ages, for years, they've forgotten about it and moved on, but inside it's still there. Imagine what it's doing to those kidneys. So this is really, really interesting. There's actually a book that I've got right here called Metaphysical Autonomy. It's a massive, right? But it's literally every chronic condition known to man, more or less, and a lot of the emotional root causes behind them. And that doesn't mean that this is solely the root cause, right? There's always a factor of things that are happening, but at the very root of it, there's always a strong emotional factor. And so when you're able to kind of get through that and isolate it, identify it, recognize it, acknowledge it, process it, and release it, that is when you're in a better state of healing, right? And things can, things have changed now. You've kind of gone over the hill where the anger that was affecting that organ or that area, or that feeling that was affecting the area has gone. So now your body can actually start to heal, right? And if there's anything else that's happening there, of course, it might be happening there. But now actually it's in a much better state than it was before. So I hope this answers your question about emotional healing. A lot of the times we find that emotional healing is always an onion, in the sense that when you peel one layer of emotion off, there's always something else. And so like when you heal one thing, or when, something, you had pain somewhere and it's got better, you'll start to find something else will pop up. And so that you deal with that emotion, and you deal with that emotion, and you deal with that emotion. Because there's so much over time we just layer on, and get through life with, right? And we just don't think about it, we just move on with it. And then like when you get older, it catches up with us. It catches up with us, right? And this is why we're so vulnerable now as a nation, as people, is because we're so emotionally and mentally so unattached from our true self, right? And from we're feeling and stuff. And we're so busy with life, and we just get on with things, and we don't give ourselves the space to just be, right? We don't give ourselves to think or reflect or feel what we do or think about stuff. And everything gets suppressed. And when we're suppressed, we're in a place where we're immunocompromised, which means that we're more vulnerable. We're more vulnerable to viruses. We're more vulnerable to getting ill, right? We're more vulnerable to, getting diseases and stuff, because there's all these emotions that are affecting our body internally, and we just have no clue. That's how that works. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope you got some value from this video. If you have any questions, you know what I am. Assalamu alaikum, and take care.